Welcome to the Northview Asks podcast, where we discuss the sticky questions that you, our church family, are asking.
Life is messy, and sometimes there are no easy answers, but we hope our conversations will help provide biblical and practical direction, always with the warmth of the gospel. Well, hey, thanks for joining us again today. We're really excited to dive into a new question that Northview has asked. And I'm joined today by Thaleia Sawatsky, my co-host. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're joined by our producer, Levi Friesen. Levi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
So just to
Doing
jump
well,
in,
thanks.
you probably don't ever have to give me a last name. Thalia is such an unusual name. I'm
That's a
like
good point.
Madonna. I
That's a
just
good
need
point.
one name.
Right. But I should probably include mine, right?
Yeah.
Joshua
We have
Scott.
a few
There's a
Joshuas
few.
on staff.
So just to clarify, Levi's our producer. He's going to be in and around our podcast a bunch here. So he's going to chime in every now and then, but he's kind of here to just make sure that we do not fall off the rails. So Levi, thank you for doing your job well.
I have a very important job.
That's a very important job because we fall off the rails.
Well, he's going to remind us if we thump the table, because that was the
That's right.
that was the discipline
Kick,
piece we had. Yeah.
Anything really.
So today we have a very big question, and I hope, Lord willing, that this will be a really helpful podcast because this is something that is everywhere around us, and it has been increasingly so in recent years, and it will just continue to be so. So based on the title of our podcast, I can assume you know where we're going. But here's the question. I'm just going to try and put it into one short question because, Thalia, you've said that this has been asked to you directly in years past. What am I to do as a Christian? I follow Jesus and I love him and I love his word. And I walk down the street and I look into a business that I want to go in and I want to buy whatever. And in its window, there is a flag, and it's a pride flag, right? The rainbows. What am I to do as a Christian? Is that for me immediately a signal of I shouldn't shop here? Or do I still have that freedom? How am I to interact with people when they make a statement, whatever that statement is, by putting that flag in their window? So that's the question on the table. This is a big one, right?
Yep.
So Thalia, I just want to start with you for a second. You have a fair bit of experience in this
Yes.
realm, but could you share a bit of that for us?
Yeah. So some people hearing that question would say, what kind of question is that? It's 2022. The pride flag is a thing. Just get over it. And other people actually send me emails about this question because they're afraid to voice it.
Right.
They're afraid they're going to be slammed or canceled, or they're going to get in trouble in some way. And so they do have this question about, if a business displays a pride flag, what should I do? Right. We know, of course, that you can spend your money wherever you want to spend your money, and you can go into stores or not go into stores. It's totally your freedom. But I don't think a pride flag is an excuse to say, I'm not going to go to that business. And I have a son, Carter, who worked for many years at Starbucks, at the Whatcom Starbucks. And every year in June, it's Pride Month, and Starbucks would fly a flag. And Carter regularly on his shifts had people come in, see the flag, turn around and go out, or see the pride flag and say, I'm so disgusted that you're flying this flag. I'm not going to buy a coffee here. And you know what? That really hurts people. It wrecks bridges to relationship, because many of those baristas would either identify as LGBTQ themselves, or they have family and friends and neighbors that they care about that would identify that way. And those kinds of comments are just not okay. So we're going to talk about the flag today.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, like you said at the start there, the problem is we hear a question like this and there's two sides. There are people who immediately think, well, this is a no-brainer. The flag's everywhere. Shop anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the people on the other side, well, this is a no-brainer. No, how could I dare?
Right.
Right. And so we have to try and find the middle ground in so much as we want to understand what's the statement being made when somebody puts the flag up in their window. And so let's talk about that for a little bit. So Thalia, could you share just a little bit about that flag? What does that flag mean? And then maybe we can get in a little bit to trying to see past that flag and understand what are they trying, the positive message that's trying to be conveyed even with that flag.
Yeah. So before we dive into the flag, is it
Sure.
okay if I explain a little bit of my background and why
Sure, yes,
this topic matters so much to me? So I am 51. I grew up in Vancouver. My home was in North Vancouver, but my daily life was in Vancouver. So I went to a small Christian school in Vancouver. On Sundays, we went to a small Mennonite church in Vancouver. I went to a youth group on Friday nights, First Baptist Church, right downtown, Brard and Robson, essentially, on Friday nights. And my dad had an office in Vancouver. He's an architect. And I worked for him every summer in Vancouver. Starting about grade 7, I started taking the city bus all the time, home from school with my siblings and friends, on the weekends to visit my friends. Like everywhere I went, I took the city bus. And there was usually multiple transfers, and a number of them went through some of the more gritty parts of Vancouver. So starting about grade 6 and 7, like nothing was hidden. The terms were normal in our house to talk about what I saw. We talked about, I interacted with people who thought and acted very differently than I did. So there were business people, there were Catholic school students, there were people who were drunk on the buses, there were people who would identify as LGBTQ, but we didn't have all the terms back then. So this was a normal part of my everyday life experience. And then I went on to undergrad at UBC, and I had classmates and friends that would have identified as LGBTQ. Again, not all the labels were present then, and professors, of course. And I went to Trinity Western into my master's degree. And as a new counselor, I worked in addictions and abuse and mental health. And my colleagues were LGBTQ and clients were LGBTQ. And I didn't think anything of it. I was so used to interacting with people who thought and act differently than I did for so many years that this was just normal.
Right.
So for me, the pride flag hasn't always been around in my world, but it became normal to represent a community that I saw on a daily basis growing up. And then you probably should know, and maybe some of you do, that I have 2 kids. Mark and I have a daughter, Ava, who's 23, and Carter is 22. And Carter is gay. And he leads a group at Trinity Western University called 1TWU. And it's for students that identify as LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, and for those that are questioning their gender and sexuality. Some are Christians, some are not Christians, some are exploring faith. So it's a wide variety of students. And it's been an opportunity for Mark and I in the last couple of years to attend a lot of these 1TW events online, of course, because of COVID. And so we have learned a lot from this community.
Right.
We've met Carter's friends. They've been at our house. We've taken them out for dinner. We enjoy them because we love Carter. We have a great relationship with him, and we want to get to know his world. We want to understand his faith. We want to understand his perspective. We want to understand what he's thinking and what his friends are thinking. And also, in the last couple of years, I have done a ton of reading and articles and websites, books, and listened to podcasts representing all different kinds of perspectives on LGBTQ. Carter is fully aware of this. We've had lots of chewy discussions. No, we don't get into like heated debates. There's no swearing, yelling, nothing. Even though we hold different perspectives on these things, we just have chewy discussions.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been quite an opportunity to have Carter be gay and have his friends around us and read and learn and study. And in part of my learning, I wanted to learn, what does this pride flag represent? We see it all over the place, but what do the colors mean? Totally. What does it stand for? Why is this important? And if I really want to understand Carter and his friends and their community, the pride flag is a huge piece of this.
Right, right. So maybe, if you would you help us understand that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I think I'm in that pool with many, many Christians. We were just chatting before this podcast here. You were mentioning all these, you went to where was it, downtown somewhere?
Yeah.
And you saw all these different pride flags, the different rainbow patterns and all these. And I had no idea that there were more than 5. I knew there was a variety. I didn't know that there were 30.
Yeah.
So could you share just a little bit about maybe the more basic ones and what they mean? And what's trying to be conveyed in the flag.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little snapshot. You can take a look online. It's very easy to do. But the original rainbow flag was created in 1977 by Gilbert Baker, who was an artist, an activist, an openly gay military veteran living in San Francisco. And he was tasked by a man named Harvey Milk, an historic figure in the fight for LGBTQ rights, to create a flag for the queer community. So he created a rainbow flag. The original one had 8 different colors. So from top to bottom, the original one was hot pink, red, orange, yellow, green, turquoise, blue, and violet, inspired by the song Over the Rainbow, 1939 Wizard of Oz. So the 8 color rainbow flag existed for a while. And then a few years later, it was changed to a 6-color pride flag because Gilbert Baker wanted to hang a pride flag, a rainbow flag, on the parade route. And it didn't work to have 8 colors because hot pink was hard to find in fabric. And so that came down to 7 colors, and 7 didn't work to have equal colors on each side of the poles. And so they put 3 colors on each side, and that's where we got the 6-color rainbow flag. Yeah. So red, orange, yellow, green, some people say indigo or blue, and violet or purple. So they have different meanings on this flag. And you may not know that. We see it all over the place, but we don't necessarily investigate what does this flag mean.
Totally.
So red equals life. Orange symbolizes healing. Yellow stands for sunlight. Green represents nature. Blue stands for serenity. And purple or violet represents the spirit of the LGBTQ people. So now a few years ago, not very long ago, 2017, there's a new flag that was created called the Progress Pride flag. And you might be shocked to learn, but I actually have one flying in the studio. I own one. Because if I'm going to teach and equip people on this, I better know what it looks like. And so I ordered one for myself. It's one of the most recent versions of the flag, and it has the 6-color rainbow flags top to bottom on the right-hand side of the flag. On the left-hand side is like a sideways V. And that has the stripes black, brown, which stand for people of color who are part of the LGBTQ community. And then it has blue, pink, and white, which stands for people who are transgender or maybe transitioning or intersex or those kinds of things, gender nonconforming. So it's trying to represent the wide variety of people that would call themselves LGBTQ plus because there are so many diverse people in this community. They are not alike one from another. They don't think alike. They don't all act alike. And we need to remember that this is a very diverse community.
Right.
Just like if I said, okay, let's take a Canadian flag and let's go to downtown Abbotsford and let's get the hundreds of people that are down there gathered around the Canadian flag, we would expect to see variety.
Totally.
Different ethnicities and languages and ages and economic status and hobbies and interests and so forth. You would not expect people who are Canadians to all be the same. And it's the same with the LGBTQ community. They're quite different one from another. So if you meet someone who identifies as LGBTQ, you've only met one person who identifies as LGBTQ. You have to get to know each person individually, their story, their background, and not say that they're all the same.
Right.
They're not.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
So that's helpful because that you will probably notice as you're walking around that there are all sorts of different flags, and so to know that they mean something, it's not just a rainbow because it's a rainbow.
Yeah.
But there's intention behind the colors.
Yeah.
And what they mean and why they're there. But on the surface, so understanding that there's so much more trying to be communicated in the different kinds of flags. But when I walk up to a business or walk by a business and I see the flag, usually just the more common one, right, the 6-color flag, in the window, what is actually just trying to, on the surface, be communicated to the community? Because on the one hand, I think most of us look at that and make immediate assumptions.
Yes.
And we take it to mean one thing and one
Yes.
thing only. But is there more? What is a business? What are people trying to communicate by flying this flag?
Yeah. And there's probably a lot of things that we would agree with about what they're trying to communicate with. So a lot of people who have like a rainbow sticker on the side of their business or a flag or some kind of rainbow display are trying to show a sense of community. They're trying to show that we support this community, or we have maybe staff members who identify as part of this community. They would say this is a safe space.
Right.
There's respect here. There's no bullying. We don't treat people badly here. The flag represents that everybody is treated well with respect. And those are things we absolutely agree with.
Right. Right.
The flag would also stand for the freedom to have a variety of expressions when it comes to gender and sexuality.
Right.
So that might be something we would say, yes, on this earth, people are allowed to choose how they want to live. That is a freedom issue that people have. We don't necessarily agree with all parts of that, but that's the freedom to think and act differently. A variety of people can think and act differently.
Yeah. So I think maybe there's a helpful certainly there's more than this, but if I could put it to two sides, on one hand, there's the flag is trying to represent the embrace of a people, right?
Yes.
And this is where there is a very reasonable pushback on a lot of Christians that people in the LGBTQ community will say is, "What, you're a Christian? You say you love, and yet your immediate response to you seeing a flag is hate or rejection."
Yeah.
When what we're trying to say is we love all people.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you love all people? And so there's a really reasonable pushback to Christians. And so on the one hand, they're trying to embrace people of all varieties, and in that sense, we want to embrace that too.
Absolutely,
we're a welcoming people, right? We want people of all sorts to come into our church on a weekend.
Yeah, we do.
We're not going to bar the doors to anybody.
No.
But then on the other hand, there is the celebrating of a lifestyle.
Yes.
And that's where on that end of the meaning, we would maybe say we disagree with the positions that people take.
Well, what's interesting is if you take a community of LGBTQ people, they disagree among themselves. So some people who would identify as part of the community would support same-sex marriage. And some would say, no, actually, I still support a traditional marriage, one man, one woman. Yeah. And some in the community would support hormone treatments and surgeries for people who are trans who want that. Right. And some in the community would say, oh, I don't know, that let's do some more research. I hesitate, especially when it comes to children and teens seeking hormones and surgeries. And so we need to remember, too, that there are people in this community who differ from each other. Right. There are faithful Christians in the LGBTQ plus community, and there are people who are not Christians or members of other faiths. Right. Again, they're not the same.
Right, totally.
And if you struggle with anything I just said there, email me. Yeah. Like, it's okay. Yeah. I will talk with you more in person. I know we can't get into it all on the podcast.
Totally.
But,
yeah, and that's really is a great comment. What we're trying to do is look past the flag, right? We're looking through the flag and recognizing that there are people behind it. People, human beings.
Yeah, people we love and care about.
Right.
Friends, neighbors, coworkers, whatever. People, my son.
Yeah, totally. And so recognizing that the moment you have more than one human being in a room, you have a diversity of humanity, like a dramatic diversity.
Yes, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And so recognizing we kind of need to press ourselves to think, okay, so I can't just make all these assumptions. No. The moment I see something that I immediately disagree with, whatever, about the person behind the flag. And so I think this is going to be your push is think about the people. Yes. Love the people.
Yes. Get to know the people.
That's right.
And allow people to think and act differently than you do. So in our house too, Carter would hold some perspectives on faith and life that Mark and I don't hold.
Right.
And there needs to be space for us to disagree well and agree on a lot of things as well. And we disagree in respectful ways, kind ways. We love each other, but there's room to sort things out and talk things through. And I think there needs to be space for that. Yeah. We don't have to agree with everything that the flag or the LGBTQ community stands for, but they don't necessarily agree among themselves.
Right.
Just like if you had a group of Canadians, not everybody voted for Justin Trudeau.
Right.
Not everybody agrees with how COVID is being handled federally or across the provinces. There's room to disagree and still call yourself a Canadian.
Right. Right. Totally. So as a simple answer to the question that we asked at the start, what should I do as a Christian? I walk by, I see the flag. Maybe a simple answer doesn't necessarily exist.
Right.
Because on the one hand, most of the time, I think we would probably say, why would you avoid? Why would you avoid somebody? It's a dramatic departure of even just the ministry of Jesus.
Right.
When we look at him hanging out with all sorts of varieties of people, he's eating with tax collectors and sinners, the Pharisees are saying, what are you doing with them? Yeah. Why would we be afraid to be among a world? Right. This is where God left us. So on the one hand, why would it stop you? But on the other hand, there could be, would you say there could be moments in a particular business with the way that they express and the things that they say and what happened, that maybe there would be reason for a Christian in good conscience to say, you know what, maybe not.
Well, when I was growing up in Vancouver, there were a lot of stores that were like spiritual in nature.
Right.
And they had a lot of crystals and dream catchers and a lot of things from like a new age perspective. Particularly Granville Island had a lot. And I loved Granville Island. And some of those stores I would take a step or two in, and I looked at the products they were selling and I went, this isn't for me.
Right.
But I'm not going to say any mean things.
Totally.
They are allowed to sell what they want to sell, and people can purchase things if they want to. But I decided for me, that wasn't where I was going to spend my time or my money. So in the same way, if you step into a store and they have a pride flag or a rainbow display and you don't want to spend your money there or spend time, you are free to do that. But I would say, please, please, please don't say any mean and hurtful comments. Recognize these are still people created by God, loved by Him, and we can get to know them, but we don't have to spend time or money in the store.
Yeah, that's great. So as in most application, quite frankly, in the Christian life, there's always a nuance, and the nuance is guided by wisdom. But regardless of what ends up being the decision that we make, we have to check our hearts and check the posture of our hearts.
Yeah.
So like you say, when you were telling the story at the beginning of people coming into Starbucks and saying, I won't shop here because of this, and with an angry tone and frustration, and what is being communicated? Well, rejection, right?
Yeah.
Because of this, because you do this or say this or fly this, I reject you.
Yeah.
And by no means is that a Christian
It's
attitude.
not okay. So there are a lot of people who would identify as Christians who, when a family member comes out as LGBTQ, they will reject or abandon that family member. And it's not okay.
Right.
Like Mark and I have been part of Carter's 1TW events this year, and online because of COVID. And unfortunately, a lot of the students don't have their parents at these events. The parents refuse to talk about these topics at home. They refuse to have their child live at home. They refuse to engage. And it makes me incredibly, incredibly sad because we have to be able to love people who think and act differently than us and allow space for people to think and act differently.
Right. So I wonder if maybe we could, Thaleia, since you've had so many of these conversations, and this question was a literal question asked to you.
It was, yes.
How would you counsel us as the church? What kind of questions would you probe into our hearts to say, listen, maybe you need to think about this, and maybe you just need to question this about your own thinking, so that we can maybe course correct a bit on some of the assumptions that we make so quickly.
Yeah, so I sometimes wonder if we really believe the Bible. Matthew 28 says, that we are to make disciples of all nations. And one day in heaven, Revelations 21 and 22 talk about the fact that all nations, tribes, and tongues will be represented in heaven. Do we really believe that every single person has the opportunity to be saved, that God loves each person and His desire for them is to love Him and follow Him, to be a disciple of His? Do we actually believe that? If we actually believe that, I think it would change how we interact with people who think and act differently than we do, because we would see them as someone that could possibly love and follow Jesus. I also know that I am not right in everything I think and do. I think if God had a conversation with me, which He often does, there are areas where I still need to be convicted. I need to change. I'm not perfect yet, and neither is anyone else. We're all in process.
Totally.
So let's keep reading God's Word. Let's keep studying it. Let's keep learning about it. Let's be in good community. Let's embrace people who are different than we are.
Totally.
And let's get to know our culture. Yeah. Just because you see a pride flag doesn't mean that we need to, act badly. We need to get to know, what does this flag stand for? We need to read books from different perspectives or listen to podcasts from different perspectives and have good, chewy discussions on these things. That's my thinking. What are you thinking, Joshua?
Yeah, I'm thinking about how for every Christian, we struggle with the temptation of trading the gospel of grace for a gospel of sin management. Yeah. Which says that in order for you to be saved, you have to get yourself right.
Right.
You have to live in such a way and do such a thing, talk in such a way. Therefore, and we, this shows up in the way that we even talk about it. Sometimes we can see a friend and we think to ourselves, man, they would make a great Christian. Right?
Yes.
And what do we mean by that? We mean that they're already so good that they're so close. Right? They just need to cross the line, and then they're a Christian. They would be so good. And it betrays what we've done with the gospel, which is we've traded it to think that in order to be saved, I need to live in such a way. I need to be a good person. I need to not sin. And so we look around at a world that is sinful in all manner of ways. And we think to ourselves, well, no, there's no way that God would save them.
I know.
Because it's about what they do, as opposed to the real gospel, which is a gospel of grace that says, listen, regardless of what you've done. In fact, Paul says, when you were enemies of God, God loved you.
Yeah.
And he sent his son to die for you. When you utterly opposed him, he says in the beginning of Romans, you exchanged the truth about God for a lie.
Yeah.
You said, I would rather forget about God, and I'd rather the dust of the earth. That seems more preferable to me.
Yeah.
What a spit in the face of God. And yet he says, I love you, and I will send my son to die for you. And if that was the gospel that warmed our hearts,
yes,
I think the way that we would respond to certain things like this would be dramatically different. That we would remember in our own souls that the reason that God loves me and has accepted me has nothing to do with the way that I've lived and behaved. It's by sheer grace. And so, how then does that invite me, encourage me, call me to love the world and to love those around me?
Yeah, and something that I remind myself often is that I don't actually have the ability to save anyone.
That's right. Yes.
I can't say the right words. I can't pray enough, fast enough. I can't have enough discussions. I can't do it. This is a work of God. Yeah. And so I would really call us to prayer. I pray for all kinds of people that I know are not yet saved, or people that are struggling in their faith, or all those kinds of things, because God has to do the work. He's the one who changes hearts and minds. Yeah. He's the one who warms people up to him and saves them. And once they are saved and they love Jesus, then he can work on different pieces of their life. The big word is sanctification. He can grow them in himself over time. Yeah. It doesn't all, magically happen overnight. We are a work in progress. But sometimes we want it just to look immediately good on the surface, but actually we should care about the heart.
Yeah, that's great. Levi, anything that you'd like to add in light of our conversation? Have we derailed it all, or are we still okay?
Well, there was no thumping of the table.
That's good.
But no, I don't think I have anything of substance to add.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Thaleia. I sure hope that this is a helpful conversation. And for you, our listeners, if this causes more questions to be raised than maybe answers were given, we just want to encourage you to reach out to us. Send us an email. You can send us an email at podcast@northview.org, or you can reach out to Thaleia herself or myself.
Yep.
We would love to hear from you. We'd love to carry on the conversation.
Yeah, we have lots of resources in this area, books and websites and podcasts, all kinds of things that I have been exploring. You're very welcome to contact me. Probably the best way is either care@northview.org, because you can't misspell that, or my initials, TS, which is where the Sawatsky helps, TS. Because if you try to spell Sawatsky and you get it wrong, it's gone into cyberspace. So care or TS at northview.org.
Great. Well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Thaleia, for helping us think through this subject. It's a big one. We're glad that you joined us, and we look forward to having you join us again next week.
See you later.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to catch all of our upcoming episodes. Join us next time as we discuss some more sticky questions.